Hello, my wonderful viewers, and welcome to another episode of Betty Adams Overanalyzes. Today, we're going to take a look at Season 1, Episode 4 of Transformers Earthspark. Now, today I want to start off with a little non-spoiler section to take note of two things. This episode was very well written, well directed, and well acted. It soothed my concerns about the depth of the show. It, at the very least, is not as shallow as I feared. The show, that is. Even if the show hasn't proved to be as deep as I hope it will yet. But this episode is, in my humble opinion, the best episode so far. And it has something that is an absolute rare gem in any show, but especially in a children's show. This show allows the main characters we know and love to be absolutely, completely, and entirely in the wrong. They are being unjust, they are being unfair, they're just being wrong. Their maturity and ignorance is not just shown, it is shown to lead to dangerous, potentially deadly consequences. Watching them fail due to this was painful in the best way. It was painful in that entertaining way. You're supposed to be feeling this pain. It was entirely, wholly believable, and I hurt with sympathy for what I knew they were going to suffer. The last time I had this strong and empathic reaction to cartoon characters making obvious mistakes was when Five took Mitch's advice in Glitch Tech's episode Alpha Leader. And my second spoiler-free note is on what I would assume to be brilliant cost-cutting measures. I have nowhere near the technical knowledge to say what kind of CGI is being used for the characters, the vehicles, and backgrounds, but the animation is smooth and overall realistic, with one glaring problem with Mo in the sidecar for the first time, and I think that the pause in animation realism there was actually a reference to something. It just looks really familiar and really cringe, so I think it was a reference to something, but I'm not sure. Anyway, but my point is that the regular animation for this show is distinctly different from the animation used for blaster bolts, explosions, and smoke clouds. I would call this superimposition of two distinct styles in animations comic. Not in the sense that it's funny, but that this is what Western comics still do, to show effects. You would have the main drawing style, usually DC or Marvel House style, and whenever there was a bang, a biff, or a pow, or a pew pew pew, there would be an effect, an artistic overlay on top of the house style to emphasize the force of the blow or trace the trajectory of a bullet. These effects were done in a far simpler style, usually flat, unshaded colors with broad outlines. They are used this very day, and you can go right now and buy a file full of them for pennies because they are so easy and cheap to both draw and animate. I think, and I'm not an animation expert, I could be totally wrong here, but I think that is what Transformers Earthspark is doing. Either for the cost savings or the nostalgia value of the visual, they are using simplified two-dimensional effects rather than the hyper-realistic animated dust and debris that Transformers Prime used. And I have to say I love this. It's I guess what you call a green flag. If the mild mental jar of seeing simplified effects means that they poured that money savings into good writing, mwah, chef's kiss. That is the kind of cost-cutting measure that makes shows great. It's like when Star Trek used the parts of shaving razors to save money on the designs for their starships. But then that raises the question, did they put that saved money into hiring better writers? Well, for this episode at least, the answer is a resounding yes. So, here come the spoilers. If you don't want any spoilers, you're going to have to click one of the links below the video to go get yourself a copy of my book, Humans Are Weird, I Have the Data. And now that you have had time to get away and not hear the spoilers, here they come. First, let's get one obvious issue out of the way. The one glaring problem in this episode that nearly ruined it for me. They clearly show Robbie struggling to break the stem of a dandelion. Everyone knows that the stem of the dandelion is deliberately weak. The plant has set that up to be weak to protect its root system. The stem snaps like brittle paper if you so much as touch it, and Robbie was clearly pulling away at the stem. It would have given instantly, leaving the taproot in place. The show should have shown his hands reaching down into the dirt to grasp the stubborn taproot if they wanted to yank until he fell over backwards thing. Terrible. Awful. But seriously, this was a good episode. The title, House Rules, is pretty explanatory. Twitch and Thrash, Robbie and Mo are children, with a child's impulse control and a child's grasp of reasons and consequences. Twitch and Thrash, even more so than Robbie and Mo, being all but literally born yesterday. The show finally gives some lip service to the poor structural integrity to a decades-old wooden frame building, as Mom and Pop Malto lay down the law that there will be no bots allowed in their antique of a house after Twitch and Thrash tumble in through a window, which causes no structural damage, which I guess makes sense if Twitch and Thrash are being careful. They are smaller bots, and it looks like they just knocked out a screen, but yeah, I expected more damage than that, of course. These children, these literal newborns with the emotions of toddlers and the intelligence of a grown adults, resent these rules, and hilarity ensues. We are in fact seeing a pretty accurate depiction of childhood mental development here in Twitch and Thrash as they mature on the show. So Thrash and Mo go off on an adventure that has the moral that rules are there for you to follow for a reason, that parents are not just trying to restrict you, that if you refuse to follow the rules, you can get yourself and others hurt badly. This is very much the kind of respect your elders lesson that you can expect in a very young children's show. Mom and Pop Malto are shown to be completely in the right. Their rules are reasonable, and their rules are very limited, giving a wide range of freedoms to all four of their children. Now, if you have watched any cartoons, sitcoms, or Disney shows in the past 4 decades, you will know how rare this setup actually is in any show aimed at children above the age of 3. Still, if Mom and Pops are right, the show isn't knocking you over the head with a 4x4 with that moral. You are still seeing the thing from the child perspective. They can only see the restrictions. Even with the wide range of farm and forest to play in, Thrash and Mo long to go only to the one place they are forbidden, and do the one thing they aren't allowed to do. This is shown as something naturally tempted. But on a side note about 4x4s, I really hope that scene with Pop Malto unloading the truck was a foreshadowing of his past history, and not just the show's usual casual disregard for mass, gravity, and human strength. There we saw when Robbie rolled the giant hay bale, when Mo broke the cave floor. Wait. Even as I type this, strange thoughts begin to occur to me. Easy there, John Henry. I don't have turbo legs. We all had to sacrifice to move here. At the time, these are all quotes from different characters earlier in the show. At the time, I thought they were just throwaway lines. But all the Maltos, save Mom Malto, have shown signs of super strength at one point or another. Mo lifting a rock the size of her head, Robbie rolling the giant hay bale, Pop Malto casually holding 2 4x4s and 2 2x4s in one hand. All 4 of these pieces of lumber were at least 6 foot long. My poor shoulders can attest to the weight Pop Malto was holding there. It's no small thing. So, is there more than meets the eye to the Malto line? We'll see. Anyway, Thrash and Mo go off on an adventure and encounter stranger danger. They fall in with a Decepticon who has a sob story and a way of twisting words around so far that even we, the audience, aren't sure what is going on. Yes, he does actually need help. Yes, his brother is actually missing, was actually kidnapped by evil people, and yes, this Decepticon they're dealing with is actually genuinely evil. This kids show has presented us with an actually evil villain. Not a villain like Mandroid, who is evil in a flashy and obvious way, but the subtle narcissistic psychopathy of a villain who first isolates children from their support structure with lies, manipulation, and love bombing, and then proceeds to introduce them to villainy through minor increments. This is very similar to how children are inducted into gangs. Let's do this one little legal thing that is fun and exciting and that has questionable reasons for the rules behind it. Then let's do this bigger legal thing because we have a strong moral reason to do it. Note that he wanted Mo to spend the time to cut the bolt for them with the bolt cutters. He wanted her to be culpable for the crime, therefore dependent on him, cut off from her family. This would make it easier to get her to commit acts she would find morally reprehensible later. Swindle's behavior is, and I can't stress this enough, evil. And the show is deliberately showing it as such. I mean, a kid probably wouldn't call it that, but they say that's wrong. Then the con pushes the moral boundaries far too fast and crosses a line that Mo sees even Thrash can't quite, and this is good, ignore. This is good, solid writing. Twitch and Thrash have so much physical presence, it's really, really easy to forget that they were, for all intents and purposes, literally born yesterday. And they are incredibly dependent on Mo and Robbie to navigate this world around them. And in that case, this puts Mo solidly in the wrong, because not only is she getting in trouble, she's getting her baby brother in trouble. And Mo, being the older, wiser sister, eventually does solve their problem, and they go home humbled to face the consequences. And Mo solved it by contacting the authority figures and calling in help. And again, this is beautiful. In so much media, the parents would have been so relieved to have their children home safe from their adventure, the punishment would have been lifted on the spot. However, Mom Malto is a warrior who knows the price of the lack of discipline, and Pop Malto shows that under his cheerful outer layer, he's got a core of iron to match his muscles of steel. They are still grounded despite the near-death experience. Again, I can't say how much I appreciate this. The parents weren't just well-intentioned, they were right. And the things that they told their children did apply even in this science fiction setting. Off in the B storyline, meanwhile, Twitch and Robbie go off on one storyline to show that strict, even enthusiastic adherence to the rules can be, in its own way, just as destructive as ignoring them. This is where Robbie gets into his fight with the dandelion that bothered me so much. I'm a botanist. I'm a landscaper. I know dandelions. Anyway, Robbie and Twitch are eagerly following the rules. But they're not following the rules because they want to do right. They're following the rules because they want the reward. And they're not really looking at the purpose of the rules. And they end up making a mess from their enthusiastic going above and beyond the call of duty. They receive no punishment, but they do end with just plain old consequences as well, having to go back and right the wrongs they committed in their carelessness. And behind it all, the parents are having their own story, working hard to make sure their home is safe and comfortable as possible for all of their children, because there are certain parts of the house that Twitch and Thrash just can't access. And that's really sad, but it is something that, is very realistic. If a kid has asthma, they can't go into a dusty old attic. If likewise, in any mobility limitation, and there are certain things that, you just can't do, even though you really want to do it. Thrash can't hang out with Mo in her room. There's no way to make the house structurally capable of withstanding that. So Thrash is going to have to accept those limitations. Meanwhile, Mom and Pop Malto are out there spending their time and effort to make it so that that doesn't negatively impact Thrash in any serious way. And that was really, really good. This also shows that Pop Malto has tremendous skill, because to take off the sides of a house and install something as complex as those swinging doors, that's no easy task. And now there's a special commendation I wanted to make into this episode. For the first time ever, a Transformers show has recognized that there are profound negative consequences to driving through a cornfield. Now this may sound silly, but it's not. Hear me out. Not just in Transformers, but in any show that involves cars seems to require this show to have at least one scene where the car tears through a cornfield. And not once have I ever seen a show, a movie, a comic book slow down and admit that they are destroying the hard work of that farmer. They are destroying food that is going to feed people. They are costing a farmer money when he's probably on a very thin margin when he can't sell the damaged corn. They're costing him water because the tracks in the soil after the irrigation flow. So even after they're long gone, they're going to be causing damage to the field. They're costing the farmer his precious time to fix the damage. And there's really not much you can do once the primary irrigation systems have been disrupted. But in this episode, Mo does look back uneasily and admit that they have done damage and injured this farmer. And you actually see the farmer stressing out in the background, showing how serious this problem is. It's just a fleeting moment, just a small thing, but it really resonates with the theme of consequences. There are consequences for your actions, not punishment, not even discipline, but other people are going to suffer if you make bad decisions. And I think that is a really, really deep subject for a show like this to address. One more side note. The ghost employee driving the transport truck at the beginning of the show. Now, the way the camera lingered on her face, I feel like I should recognize her from somewhere. She has a very distinctive face. Maybe she was a Joe or someone who showed up in G1. I look forward to seeing more of her in the series and finding out why she has claw marks on her face, because that's what those were. So, those are my thoughts on episode 4. What do you think? Are the Malto superpowered? Is there something in the Malto bloodline that we haven't seen yet? Hit that like and subscribe button. Go check out the links below the video for a copy of my book, Humans Are Weird, We Took a Vote, the second book of human absurdity. Peace out, my wonderful viewers.